I shouldn't remember the first look as clearly as I do. But I do. It was in the narrow hallway outside the office kitchen, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the faint smell of burnt coffee still hanging in the air. She wasn't supposed to stop, she was supposed to walk right past me like everyone else did. Instead, she looked at me. Her eyes didn't scan quickly like a boss sizing up a new hire. They lingered. Just a second too long. I froze with my paper cup halfway to the machine. She had one hand curled around a folder, the other tucked loosely against her side as if she needed to anchor herself. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't. I broke the silence first. "Morning." She tilted her head slightly, like she'd been caught staring. A small smile touched her mouth, brief and almost embarrassed, before she looked down. "Morning." It should have ended there. Except it didn't. I was 23, 2 months into the job, and too used to blending into the background. She, Elena, was in her 40s. Not the kind of woman who faded. She carried the kind of presence that made people step aside without her saying a word. Sharp blazers, clipped tone, a rhythm to her heels on the tiles that echoed long after she'd passed. Everyone called her intimidating. I didn't see that. Not yet. What I saw was the way she lingered near the doorway when she thought no one was watching. The way her fingers drummed too quickly on the edge of her coffee cup before she stopped herself. Little things. Tiny slips in her control. I noticed them. Maybe because I was watching her too much. That morning, she didn't leave the kitchen right away. She set the folder down on the counter, too carefully, like she needed an excuse to be near. "You're new," she said finally. Her voice was lower than I expected. Steady but softer. I nodded. 2 months. "And you're—" She frowned, as though she should have remembered my name already. I almost told her, but then she surprised me. She said, "You look familiar." The words caught me off guard. Familiar? We'd never met before. I tried to smile, but it came out crooked. "Maybe in your dreams." I regretted it instantly. Too casual. Too reckless. But she didn't laugh, didn't roll her eyes. She just stared at me, the faintest crease between her brows, like she was replaying the line in her head. The coffee machine sputtered loudly, steam fogging the air for a moment, breaking whatever had been building. She reached for her folder again, but her fingers brushed mine on the counter. Barely a touch. Just enough to make me forget how to breathe. She pulled back quickly. "Excuse me." Her voice was brisk again, the professional mask snapping back into place, but her eyes didn't match her tone. I couldn't read them fully, but I knew enough. Something had shifted. The rest of the day blurred. I sat at my desk pretending to work, every sound drowned by the memory of her voice, the warmth of her hand against mine. Ridiculous, I told myself. She was older, my boss's ex for God's sake, and I was just a kid in the corner cubicle. But when I glanced up late in the afternoon, I caught her standing at the far end of the office. She wasn't looking at her phone or at the papers in her hand. She was looking at me. Our eyes locked for half a second. Long enough. Long enough to know this wasn't over. And then, she turned and walked away without a word. But as she did, she left something behind. A question I couldn't stop asking. What exactly did she mean when she said I looked familiar? I told myself not to wait for her. Not to glance up every time footsteps crossed the office floor. But when Elena finally appeared again, late in the day, folder pressed to her chest like armor, I knew I hadn't stopped waiting at all. She paused by my desk. Too casual to be casual. The copier jammed again. "You're good with machines, right?" I wasn't, not really. But I stood anyway, glad for the excuse. "Sure." "Show me." Her office was quieter than the open floor, muted carpet, a single lamp casting more warmth than the ceiling lights outside. The copier sat against the wall, paper crumpled in its mouth like it had been chewing too hard. I fiddled with it, pretending confidence, while she leaned against the edge of her desk and watched. It wasn't the copier that made my hands clumsy. It was her. The way her blazer hung open, revealing a pale silk blouse. The way she pushed a strand of hair behind her ear, slow, as though she wasn't aware she was being watched. "Were you always this unlucky with machines?" she asked lightly. "Maybe they just don't like me." "Or maybe," she said, her eyes flicking to mine, "you don't like them." I swallowed, pulling the jam paper free. "Maybe." The silence stretched, but not empty. Heavy. And then she said something I didn't expect. "He used to fix these things. My ex. He hated the noise, said it gave him headaches." I looked up. Her face didn't move, but her hand gripped the desk edge tighter than before. I didn't know what to say, so I said the wrong thing. "Do you miss him?" Her eyes flickered, then steadied. "No. Not him. Just the parts of myself I was when I was with him." It was the most unguarded thing she'd said, and it lodged in my chest. I thought about telling her something back, that I knew what it was like to not recognize yourself, to wonder if you were too young or too old for the life you were living. But the words stuck. Instead, I pretended to study the machine, though my focus was on the warmth radiating from her presence. I noticed stupid things: the faint line of her lipstick smudged at the corner, the way her perfume smelled faintly of citrus and smoke, the soft tremor in her breath when the silence stretched too long. Dangerous things to notice. Things I shouldn't. When I finally straightened, the copier spat out a clean sheet of paper like it was mocking me. "Fix," I said. She smiled faintly. Not triumphant, softer. Almost grateful. She walked closer, and for a second I thought she might stop herself. But she didn't. Her hand brushed my arm, light as paper. "Thank you," she murmured. Her eyes held mine longer than they should have. Long enough that I almost said what was on my tongue, that I'd been thinking about her since the kitchen, that I wanted her to keep looking at me like this. But I bit it back. Then she said the words I didn't expect. Quiet, almost hesitant. "Don't go just yet. Stay." Her office door clicked softly behind me when I stayed. The sound made the air heavier, like I'd stepped into a room where rules didn't quite reach. She didn't move right away. Just leaned back against the desk, arms loosely crossed, as though she hadn't planned this either. Her eyes lingered on me, searching for what I didn't know. "You don't talk much," she said at last. I shrugged. "Most people don't notice when I do." Her lips curved, not quite a smile. I noticed. The words shouldn't have mattered so much, but they did. My chest tightened with something reckless. I wanted to ask why. Instead, I glanced down at the stack of papers on her desk, pretending interest. The top sheet was a resignation letter, not hers, but someone else's. Still, the thought of her leaving, vanishing from the office, unsettled me. She followed my gaze. "Don't read that." "I wasn't." "You were." Her voice was quiet, almost playful, but her posture wasn't. She pushed off the desk, closing the distance between us until the soft scent of her perfume blurred my focus. "I don't miss him," she said suddenly, voice low. "Not really. But I miss the way it felt to be seen. Do you understand that?" Her words hit something raw in me. Too raw. I did understand. More than I wanted her to know. "Yes," I said, softer than I meant. For a long second, either of us moved. Her hand hovered near mine on the desk, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin. My pulse hammered. If I just shifted an inch, a sudden knock at the door shattered it. She jerked back, smoothing her blouse, her face sliding into something professional. "Yes?" The door cracked open. A young assistant poked his head in. "Sorry, Elena, just need your signature on these." "Leave them." Her voice was calm, clipped. Too calm. The assistant hesitated, glanced at me, then slipped the papers onto the desk and left. The door clicked shut again. Silence returned, thicker than before. I tried to steady myself, to step away, to remind myself this was dangerous. She was older, my boss's ex, my superior in every way that mattered. But when I looked at her, I couldn't pull back. She was still standing close, her fingers brushing absently against the edge of the desk, restless. You should go, she said finally. I nodded, though I didn't move. My body refused. Do you want me to? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Her eyes caught mine, sharp, conflicted, vulnerable all at once. She didn't answer right away. Instead, her hand rose, hovered in the air as if to touch me, then fell back to her side. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know what I want. The silence that followed was dangerous. And for the first time, I wasn't sure either of us wanted to be safe. I told myself to walk out. To put my hand on the doorknob, thank her for the coffee, for the trust, for whatever strange thing this was, and leave before I made a mistake I couldn't take back. But I didn't move. Neither did she. The lamp threw her face into soft shadows, highlighting the small lines at the corners of her eyes, not flaws, not to me, but proof of time she carried that I didn't. She looked at me like she was trying to decide if I could handle the weight of whatever she might say next. You're too young for this, she murmured finally. For what? My voice came out rougher than I meant. Her lips pressed together, like she already regretted opening her mouth. For me. The words landed between us like a confession, though she tried to pass them off as reason. I should have agreed. I should have nodded, laughed it off, eased the tension. Instead, the truth slipped out. You don't look at me like you think that's true. Her eyes widened just slightly, then narrowed, searching me. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. She exhaled slowly, shaking her head, but it wasn't dismissal. It was restraint. You don't know what you're saying. Maybe not, I admitted. But I know how it feels when you look at me. Like I'm not invisible anymore. Her breath caught. Just a flicker. Enough to tell me I wasn't wrong. I shouldn't. She started, then stopped. Her hand lifted halfway, almost reaching for me before curling back against her chest. You shouldn't what? I asked. The question was too sharp, too bare. But I couldn't take it back. Her silence stretched. She glanced at the closed door, then back at me, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not of me. Of herself. The room felt small, the air dense with everything unspoken. My hand twitched against my side, aching to close the distance, but I stayed rooted where I was. If I moved, I wasn't sure I could stop. She spoke at last, voice low, raw. I spent years with someone who never really saw me. Who only wanted what I could be for him. And now... She cut herself off, biting the inside of her lip. And now? I asked gently. Her eyes lifted to mine. They burned, sharp and vulnerable at once. Now I'm standing here with you. And it terrifies me. The words knocked the air from my chest. Terrifies. She wasn't hiding it anymore. Neither was I. I stepped closer, slow, deliberate, until only a breath separated us. My hand hovered near hers but didn't touch. Not yet. Elena, I began, but the sound of her name broke something loose inside me. Her gaze dropped to my mouth, then back to my eyes. For a second, everything in me leaned forward. Every reason not to burn against every reason I wanted to. And then silence. Heavy, electric. She didn't move back. I didn't move forward. Her whisper came like a dare, like a door cracking open. What happens if we don't stop? Her question hung in the air. What happens if we don't stop? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart was too loud in my ears. But then her phone buzzed against the desk, shattering the fragile silence. She flinched, reaching for it with a speed that felt almost desperate. I turned away, giving her privacy I didn't really want to give. Her voice, low and strained. Yes. I know. No, I'm not. No, he's not here. A pause. Then softer, more controlled. Please stop calling me. She hung up. The room stayed still. When I finally looked at her, her hand was trembling around the phone. She set it down too quickly, as if to hide it. Your ex? I asked quietly. She hesitated. Too long. Yes. I should have left it there. But something in me pushed. Is that why you said I looked familiar? Her head snapped up, eyes sharp. What do you mean? I swallowed, suddenly unsure. Back in the kitchen, you said I looked familiar. Did you mean it, or was that just… She cut me off. You do. The words were so quick, so certain, that they hit harder than I expected. You remind me of him, she said, and her voice cracked on the last word. Not how he is now. How he was. When we first met. When I still believed him. The ground shifted beneath me. I wasn't me anymore. I was a shadow of someone she'd lost. I should have pulled back. Should have hated it. But instead, the thought lodged deep, that in some impossible way, I carried a piece of her past. Elena. My throat was dry. I'm not him. I know. She forced a smile, but it didn't hold. And that's the problem, isn't it? You're not him. And yet… She stopped, pressing a hand to her forehead, like the words were too heavy. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. That what she saw in me wasn't just a reflection. That I'd been noticing her in ways no one else did, the restless tapping of her fingers, the way she lingered in doorways, the soft fragility beneath her steel. But before I could speak, the door handle rattled. Both of us froze. Ms. Marlowe? It was the assistant's voice again. Your ex is downstairs. He's asking for you. Her face drained of color. I'll handle it, she said quickly, stepping back from me. Too far, too fast, like she needed space to breathe. The assistant's footsteps faded down the hall. The silence left behind was jagged. I forced the words out. You don't have to see him. You don't owe him anything. Her eyes found mine, wide, raw, searching. And what do I owe you? The question stopped me cold. Because I didn't have an answer. Her question. And what do I owe you? Stuck in the air like a blade. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. Every possible word felt wrong. If I said nothing, I'd sound distant. If I said everything, I'd sound reckless. So I just stood there, staring at her, the hum of the lamp the only sound in the room. You don't know me, I said finally, voice low. Not anything. Not even this. Her shoulders slumped, just slightly. Relief or disappointment, I couldn't tell. She turned away, fingers tracing the edge of her desk as if she needed to hold on to something solid. I shouldn't have let this go so far, she whispered. I've spent months trying to rebuild myself, and now here I am, standing in an office with a boy who makes me feel. She stopped, biting the words back. Don't call me that, I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine. Sharp. Challenging. I'm not a boy, I continued. Not with you. The truth rang in the silence. She looked at me like she wanted to argue, but the fight drained before it reached her lips. I stepped closer, slow, cautious, as if testing the weight of the air between us. Elena, I said softly. I don't want to replace him. I don't want to remind you of who he was. I just want to be someone you see. For me. Not for him. Her lips parted. A breath trembled out of her. She looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. And then she whispered, barely audible. You already are. The words hit me harder than any kiss could. I hadn't realized how much I needed them until they were there, hanging in the space between us. But the moment didn't last. Her phone buzzed again. This time she didn't answer. She let it ring, the vibration rattling against the desk until it stopped. When she finally spoke, her voice was steadier. He'll keep calling. He doesn't stop. He never did. That's why I left him. Her confession cracked something open in me. I wanted to take her hand, to tell her she didn't have to face him alone. But instead I asked the question that mattered. What do you want now? She froze. For a long moment she didn't move, didn't breathe. Then slowly, carefully, she stepped toward me. Her hand lifted, not hesitant this time, and rested against my chest. Her eyes met mine. I want to stop being afraid of wanting. The touch of her palm was enough to undo me. I covered her hand with mine, holding it there, letting her feel the steadiness of my heartbeat. No kiss. No dramatic gesture. Just two people finally admitting the truth without words. For the first time, it didn't feel forbidden. It felt inevitable. When I look back, I realize the turning point wasn't the touches we almost shared, or the silence that stretched too long. It was the moment she finally said it out loud. I want to stop being afraid of wanting. Those words lived in me. They changed the shape of what we were. After that night in her office, things didn't snap neatly into place. We didn't fall into each other's arms, ignoring the world. Life wasn't that clean. Her phone still buzzed with calls she ignored. My hand still hesitated before reaching for her, unsure of whether I had the right. But the difference was this: we stopped pretending. She no longer looked through me, and I no longer looked away. We talked, about small things at first, then bigger ones. About the loneliness that had followed her even in a crowded room. About the way I felt invisible, younger, and yet old at the same time, like I'd been waiting for something I couldn't name. And in those conversations something grew. Not forbidden. Not reckless. Just ours. The ex didn't vanish overnight, but he lost his power. She stopped answering him. Stopped apologizing. She told me once, quietly, that it wasn't me who gave her strength, but the reminder that she still had the right to feel alive, to choose herself again. That mattered more than any kiss we eventually shared. Because when her lips finally touched mine, not rushed, not stolen, but chosen, it wasn't about filling the emptiness left by someone else. It was about starting something new. I learned something, too. That love doesn't always show up wrapped in the right timing, the right ages, the clean circumstances people expect. Sometimes it arrives messy, complicated, wearing the face of someone you think you shouldn't want. But if it's real, if it makes you feel seen in a way nothing else does, maybe that's worth the risk. And for us it was. So no, I'm not just her boss's ex's replacement. And she's not just the older woman I shouldn't have wanted. We're something else now. Something both fragile and unshakable. I don't know what the future looks like. Maybe that's the point. We'll keep building it, one choice at a time, without running, without fear. All I know is this: when I catch her eyes across the room, and she doesn't look away, I've never felt more alive. Thought Balloon, did you enjoy the story? Sparkles, what kind of stories would you like to hear next? More forbidden romances, emotional confessions, or slow burn connections?